Good afternoon, good evening to some of you, and even good morning to some of you. Welcome to our webinar today focused on students and finishing strong for the semester and looking ahead to some questions that you might have about the summer or even beyond. I'm Tracy Calandrillo, the Assistant Vice President of Campus Life, and I'm going to invite our other presenters to introduce themselves in just a minute, but I want to go over a few housekeeping items with you first. That all participants of the webinar, except the presenters, are entered in mute mode. You can get questions to us through the GoToWebinar application on your device. If you would like to view this webinar with live captioning, the URL for that website is in the welcome message in the GoToWebinar. As well, the session is being recorded, and a link to that recording will be shared with all registrants as soon as it can be made available. So with that, I'd like to have the rest of the presenters introduce themselves.
Great. Hi, I'm Wendy Boland. I'm the Interim Dean for Graduate Studies.
Hi, I'm Jessica Waters. I'm the Dean of Undergraduate Education and Vice Provost for Academic Student Services.
And I'm Mary Clark, Deputy Provost and Dean of Faculty. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Brown. I'm the Dean of Students.
And hi, everyone. I'm Gihan Fernando. I'm Executive Director of the AU Career Center.
So Dean Boland is going to get us started. We're going to start by talking about pass-fail and some common questions that people have around that.
Great, thanks. So we've had a lot of questions about pass-fail, and we know that this is something that is a good option for a lot of people, but definitely wanted to answer your questions. So the first set of questions revolve around whether or not pass-fail will look poorly on a transcript and how it might be perceived by graduate schools and also businesses or potential jobs. And so while we have no way of actually predicting how every school will evaluate or consider pass-fail grades, we want you to know and be confident in the fact that every academic institution, all professional communities are all facing similar challenges, and we're all new to the realities of COVID-19. Everyone is being impacted and trying to do the best they can in this difficult situation. And therefore, many schools are offering pass-fail options. And so the idea of taking a course or two pass-fail and coupling that with a strong academic performance, we do not believe would reflect poorly on you. We've also had a question on whether or not pass-fail impacts your GPA calculation. And pass-fail grades are not calculated into the calculation of GPA. Therefore, those grades cannot help you or hurt you. They will give you the degree requirement for passing the course, but cannot change your GPA one way or another. Okay, sorry, as I scroll through my questions. We had a question on how does pass-fail options benefit graduate students? For any student, the pass-fail option can help you because it can allow you to not negatively impact your GPA. If you feel like you've done very well and have been happy with your GPA so far, and you're worried that due to the stresses and everything you're going through, maybe your grades would be slightly lower in a course than you would expect, pass-fail is a great option for that. We've also had questions on the wording of pass-fail on the transcript, and we want you to know that there will be information on the transcript about pass-fail. And while the wording is not completely confirmed yet, I'm just going to read you the wording that we think will be there. We believe that the wording on the transcript will say something to the effect of a grading policy change that expanded pass-fail was allowed in this semester due to the COVID-19 interruption. We also had questions from international students about their ability to take pass-fail. And in general, the answer is yes. International students do have the ability to take pass-fail. However, students in a program where there's a specific progression requirement, like you need a certain GPA to progress, these would be students that would not be able to take pass-fail due to those requirements. And students in accelerator programs are an example of this. Finally, we were asked if the university is considering adjusting grading scales for classes in addition to providing the pass-fail option. However, given the withdrawal policy that we've extended and the allowance of pass-fail for most courses, the university does not have plans at this time to adjust any grading scales. And so we do not want you to rely on that expectation. In addition to the changes we have made, we have asked faculty to remain cognizant of all the stressors that everyone is going through, especially students at this time. And so with that, what I'd like to do is hand off the last few pass-fail questions to some of my colleagues, and the first one being our Dean of Undergraduate Students, Jessica Waters.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to virtually be with all of you. We miss you terribly. This job is so much better when we are getting to interact with all of you in person on a daily basis. So please know that we are missing you quite a bit. I wanted to touch base on a couple of the pass-fail questions that we've received and also reiterate some of the major points so that everyone is working off of the same information. Keep in mind that the last day to change the pass-fail grade for the spring 2020 semester is April 27th. So before that point, you can choose for your grade in any individual class to be A through F. You can choose for it to be pass-fail. And we've also extended the deadline to withdraw from a class with a W on the transcript until April 27th. These are conversations that you want to have with your academic advisors. As you're looking at how you're doing in each of your courses, have that conversation with your advisor about where should I be spending my time? Does it make sense to do a pass-fail in this class? Does it make sense to do A through F in another? And also, if you're really struggling, have the conversation about does it make sense to withdraw from a class? Because the withdrawal grade on the transcript, it reflects as a W, but it will not negatively impact your GPA. So another option for all of our students. As we were making the really hard decisions about whether we should go to a pass-fail system, whether it should be optional, one of the key considerations for us was making sure that for all of our students, they were provided with the most amount of flexibility and that students could make individual choices based on their own circumstances and the challenges that people may be facing that are visible to us or invisible to us. So we really wanted to make sure that students could make individualized choices based on their situation. So please do talk to your academic advisors. Please also know that we have stressed with faculty time and time again the importance of letting students know how they're doing in the class. So if you're feeling uncertain or unclear about, should I do A through F, should I do pass-fail, talk with your faculty members and say, can you give me a sense of where my grade stands right now? And we've asked all faculty to make sure they're providing that information to students when you ask for it. So that is absolutely a legitimate conversation to have with any of your faculty members. We've also received quite a few questions about, on the undergraduate level, whether courses that are pass-fail can be used to satisfy AU core requirements. AUX, complex problems, habit of mind, and the answer is yes. For this semester, if you elect to take a core course, pass-fail on the P through F, if you earn a grade of a pass, that can fulfill an AU core requirement. And then finally, I wanted to remind everyone that a grade of pass equates to a C. So a C or better in a course is what amounts to the pass grade. A C minus does not, right? So as you're making that evaluation about whether to go to a pass-fail grade, keep in mind the C is considered the pass. We've also received quite a few questions about what future employers might think about pass-fail grades on the transcript. Dean Boland touched a bit on graduate schools, but I wanted to ask Gihan Fernando to jump in and talk a bit about employers and employment prospects, particularly for our graduating seniors.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm also glad to be here. And as Dean Waters said, I miss all of you and being with you. And it's not the same, really doing this all remotely. To address the questions that had come in around pass-fail and job or grad school prospects first, as was already referenced, it's hard to give kind of a blanket answer that applies to every single school and so on, right? But the general thing I would say is that most employers are human beings and they are going to understand that this is an extraordinarily unusual situation. And I think the best way to evaluate this is what is best for you right now to get through, right? My sense is that there are going to be very few employers who are actually going to hold this against you, right? To talk about employers first, and are going to say, oh, they took that class or all of their classes pass fail in this particular semester when we all know what everybody was going through, right? That is unlikely to be the case. And so I think that that is a good broad on which to move forward, is first think about what do you need and what is most important for you to succeed and complete the semester successfully for yourself, right? That's a good baseline principle. If you have a specific situation that you want to run by us, we are very much available. Your career advisors, both in the AU Career Center, which I lead, as well as the various career centers around school. So COGAD has its own embedded career center, SIS has career advisors available in there, and WCL also has its own career center. So I would strongly urge you to have that conversation if you have particular concerns about yourself. On the question of how will this affect my prospects for grad school, I'll say the same kind of general statement, right? Is that it's hard to say one answer for everybody because it may not be. There may be exceptions here and there. And I'm going to give you the broad general sense that I have for particular kinds of schools. So for many grad programs, it's going to not be an issue going forward. And this would be particularly true, I think, if you are a graduating student who is already admitted to another program and anticipates starting in the fall. They have made their decisions without knowing what your grades are, right, for this semester. And so they're not going to largely care what your grades are right now, and whether you take a class pass, fail, or not. With that, I'll also talk a little bit about some particular situations. So my prior life was as a lawyer, and I worked for many years in law schools. And so I keep up with what's going on in the law school world fairly generically. And very much across the board, I would say law schools don't care about this, right? I think I can say that with some certainty that is broadly not going to be an issue. Med schools may be a little bit different, and this is one piece that I want you to think about. If you're a pre-med student, I was talking with Lynn Arneson, who is our faculty director of the pre-med program here at AU, and her advice is that if you're taking a class that might be particularly relevant for med school, like a particular science class, organic chemistry or other such, right, where they really look at that, that may be a good class to take for a grade if you are determined to go on to med school. But in other instances of more electives or other classes that are not core class requirements for your pre-med applications, that might be a slightly different situation, and that might be perfectly fine to take. Again, I would advise you to talk to either Anna Littman in my office, who is the career director with responsibility for career advising, and med school specifically is her specialty on the grad school side, or with Lynn Arneson, if you aren't already connected with her. She's in CAS, and you should be able to connect with her relatively easily. I'm going to move on to some broader questions about finding jobs in what is undoubtedly going to be a difficult economy. Job internships, right? And that question I come up with, particularly with a focus on our graduating students and what they might be facing as they come out. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We all know it's tough out there, right? And it's going to be tough. And so what's your strategy here? I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record. I'm going to give you some broad general advice, which is not going to be applicable to every single situation. And then I'm going to give you the specific advice of please consult with an individual, with one of your career advisors who's here to help you work through your particular situation. Each of you is different. You have different needs and different focuses. And so that is, if you take nothing away else away from this webinar that the time we're spending with you, if that's the message that you get, and I'm assuming that's true across the board for all of us, right? In the relative areas that we have, please reach out, please consult. We are trying as much as we can to do outreach, but it is even better and more timely for you if we can be responsive to your needs as you have them. Let me give you some broad brush kinds of planning pieces here. I think the most important thing in a difficult economy is to be intentional and thoughtful about how you're moving forward in your job search. So I think it's really important to have your passions front and center and think about what would be my best target? What was the target that I had before COVID-19 hit us, right, and changed the world? And that is your first go-to place that you want it to be. We will work with you to try to help you achieve that, right? That's your first choice, and that's really important. And now the next part is also really, really important. Given that we're in a tough economy and that it's going to be tough out there, you have to also have a plan B. I think that that's also really, really important. And another important part of this is to have plan B simultaneously with plan A, because you don't want to be in the situation where plan A doesn't work out and then plan B is not available because you haven't been pursuing it actively at that point, right? And so have plan B as well, and maybe you might also need plan C. Right? And there are resources now on all the different career office websites that'll point you toward ways to find remote work for the summer or potentially for jobs as well as resources on how to do that work well when you have obtained that work, right? And tips and tricks on how to conduct yourself effectively in a remote situation. In addition, you want to think about ways while you're searching, and if you have an extended search, what are you going to do in the interim? What are the things that you can do to maintain your skills, right? And we're putting together, as we speak, a variety of resources that will help point you towards things that might be good alternative ways in which to build your skills and your experience base and make you a stronger candidate in what is going to be a competitive market. Those are some of the things. So there might be a particular kind of certification that you want to gain that is available at low or no cost, right? There might be service work that you can engage in as you are pursuing your job opportunity, your plan A and your plan B simultaneously in an area that is an area of passion and interest for you that will continue to build your contacts and your skills in those areas. And the last word I'll say is on this topic is how do you continue to maintain those connections, right? That just reminded me. And we've always had LinkedIn as a tool that helps us all connect with each other virtually. And that is now even more of an important tool. In addition, there is a AU-specific networking tool called Alumni Fire. And again, if you just Google that, it'll come right up. And that's a community of AU alumni and students and it's a platform that allows you to connect across those platforms and connect with a variety of people who are volunteering. Speaking of alumni, all the offices are working closely with our alumni boards, as well as all the alumni out there to, again, try to surface opportunities for the AU student body that'll be, you know, giving you the advantage on a job or opportunity that might otherwise go to somebody else, right? So that you have a better shot at getting that opportunity than somebody else at a different school who's in a similar position. We had another question on the job front, which was, how will AU support its international students with job prospects, and in particular around the OPT process? And so this is for graduating students that I'm going to speak about here first. If you haven't done so already, international students who are on this call, I strongly recommend that you touch base with your ISSS counselor so that you're very familiar with what the timelines are for filing your papers that you need to do in order to apply for something like OPT, right? And to make sure that you're in the right window and have done all the things that you need to do so that you're set up legally to be eligible for your optional practical training going forward. With that, all I'll say is that everything that goes into an OPT search is very similar to what I said previously for everybody else, right? There is not a process where AU or anybody else is sort of handing out, it's not a placement, the OPT process, which is how the question was framed in the question that I got on this. But rather it is that you would go out and try to secure this kind of employment within the appropriate time frame so that you can start your OPT appropriately. Again, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's going to be, it's a tough market out there for everyone. And it's always been more competitive for our international students to find these kinds of opportunities. And so, again, reverting to my mantra, which is seek assistance, right? Come and talk to us. We are here to help you. Advisors are telling me that their appointment schedules are somewhat below where they normally are, which is entirely understandable. Students, all of you are, and all of us are having lots of other things to focus on at this moment. But we don't have a problem with getting you in. If you need to be seen, almost always within, certainly from my office, I can just speak that within 24 hours we'll be able to get you either quick advice or likely more extensive advice and conversation on these topics. I will, with that, turn it over to Dean Clark to talk about faculty support related issues.
Sure, thank you, Gihan, and I'm glad to be with you this afternoon and to be talking about concerns or questions that you might have related to faculty. Please know that I and the provost have been regularly messaging with faculty about the need to be supportive and understanding and indeed compassionate towards our students. And what I hear is substantially that faculty are proceeding in that way. Faculty understand the challenges that our students and we all are facing at this time. But there was a question about what a student can do if they don't feel like their faculty has been sufficiently supportive or sufficiently responsive. And the answer there is that you should always feel free to reach out to me. I'm the Dean of Faculty and my email address is deanoffaculty@american.edu. You should also feel free to reach out to your department chair, program director, or dean of the school and college in which the course is offered. So there are many resources to address any questions or concerns you might have about faculty. At that, why don't I hand it over to our Dean of Students, Jeff Brown, but I'm happy to entertain any further questions you might have related to our faculty. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Mary. So again, Jeff Brown, Dean of Students. Very happy to be here, and I hope everyone is well and safe. Really just wanted to touch on a few things. You've heard already from so many of my colleagues about the resources out there, from your faculty to advisors to the Career Center. I just want to remind you that our office, the Office of the Dean of Students, we are still operating and we're still here to support you, particularly if there are things going on in your life that maybe we've not talked about yet, or you just don't necessarily know who to go to or where to go to. Know that we are still here for you, myself and my entire staff. So that might be helping you with faculty communication. It may be if you are on a leave and coming back from a leave and you need some help kind of navigating what's next in this new environment that we're operating in. And the biggest thing we're probably doing right now is also just providing you information about resources. And a lot of those same resources exist on our campus, but they may be operating in a different way. So we are really trying to stay on top of that to make sure we can provide you with the best information possible. So if you do need to access us, we are all working from home or working remotely, but you can still reach us. Our phone is still being answered, the 202-885-3300, but even easier is to schedule an appointment online through the Dean of Students website. And similar to the Career Center, our availability is there generally, if not the same day, the next day, you should be able to find an appointment with one of our staff. Certainly, if you've been working with a specific case manager, you can request an appointment with that same person, but anyone would be available to help you out. As my email address is dos@american.edu, and you can also schedule appointments with myself. So I hope everyone's doing well, and I'd be happy as we get to the end of this to answer any specific questions you might have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Dean of Undergraduate Education, Jessica Waters.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute, the perils of all these different technology platforms. I think we wanted to open it up generally to some questions. Tracy, I don't know if you were going to throw some out, or I can talk a bit more generally about some advising issues. Up to you.
I think we have a couple more areas we're going to focus on before we get to questions. One question related to advising that came up is around who do I talk to if I took this semester off, or how can I understand the environment if I'm not necessarily on campus right now, or well, taking classes right now. My apologies.
Right. So I think there are two places that a student would reach out. One, their undergraduate or graduate advisor, whoever they've been working with. So for example, if you've been on a temporary leave, talk to your academic advisor to talk about a transition plan for coming back. And then obviously, as Dean Brown mentioned, the Dean of Students office also works with students on those issues. So those are 2 points of contact. I also wanted to highlight, I had meant to highlight before, our academic coaching resources are another great area for our students to seek some additional support. So our academic coaching team is available for normal academic coaching, helping you plan big assignments and study skills and things like that, but have also really shifted some of their focus to how do we help students succeed as we transition to an online environment. So I really encourage you to check out the academic coaching resources. If you look on the website, there's all the links to book an academic coach, but a really good resource right now.
Thank you. Yes, that's really it. I think that the numbers for that service, more and more students are using those right now, which is really great. That's what we want to see.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So something that we wanted to talk just a little bit about, and I'm going to talk about now, is for all of us, everyone who is going through this, we're in the middle of a disruption to our routines. And now that you are about, 3 weeks into doing classes in a different way on this online platform, and so maybe you have some routines that are working for you. I wanted to talk just a little bit about managing stress and creating a routine, some really basic concrete things for you to consider, especially as we go into these last few days of the regular class semester and then moving into finals. So it is really important. Our brains and our bodies are used to and work best when we have routines. Even if the routine is not having a routine, the very fact of being able to sleep in the same space or go to the same buildings each day has gotten disrupted for you because you're no longer in those spaces where you were learning. and it takes extra energy to develop the ability to think and learn in a different environment. So I really encourage you, if you haven't, to be paying attention to when during the day you have energy, what are the things that are transitioning pretty well for you, and what are the areas, particularly there may be some of your classes where the new learning platform really challenges you in different ways. For example, for myself, I very much learn best when I'm in an environment where I can have a conversation or ask questions and have an exchange as I'm learning things. Some of the classes lend themselves well to doing that online and others do not. Or you may have a way that it's important for you to be hands-on and learn, and it's harder to do that now. So the reason I say that is for you to be aware of it, learn for yourself, and then refine the routines of how you study and how you navigate school in the context of all of the other things that are going on for you. All of us are dealing with some sort of shift of being in the same space all of the time or most of the time. And the impact can be, and this piece is different for all of us, is that impact. You might have gone from a situation where you were having a quiet time to study, and now you're in a space where multiple people are taking classes or working or managing multiple things at the same time, and so you're having to adjust to that. I encourage you to do, if you are someone who likes to plan like this, look at what's the schedule that works best for you. Or if you identify there's a part of the day that is particularly stressful for me, can you shift around when you study or make some arrangements that you study in a different place? If at all possible, if you're able to set up a space in your living environment that can be dedicated to study in class, that can be very helpful. Your brain is going to be looking for a routine and for associating a certain space or a certain setup with learning. If at all possible, and I know this isn't possible for everyone, do not use your bedroom or at least your bed for studying. It is really important for our brains to associate our beds with sleep and the space where we study or learn, not in the same area. I know it's not possible for everyone, but that's a really important one. For myself, for example, I had my office set up in my bedroom because other people are doing other things in my home that I needed to be separated from, and I had to change that because that was not working, and I noticed that it impacted my sleep. So another really basic piece is paying attention to all the different parts of you and use this idea of not letting your tank run empty. So pay attention to your sleep, pay attention to hydration. It's really important to stay hydrated so that your brain can concentrate and focus. Pay attention to, as you can, eating foods that are healthy for you and making sure that you're getting vegetables and protein. Paying attention to exercise when you can. That may or may not mean that you can leave your living space to get some exercise, but maybe move around and do some squats or some stretches in your body so that you can be paying attention to your muscles. Make sure to pay attention to your posture and your breathing. And it's really helpful to have times built throughout your learning day where you have small distractions, maybe like 5 songs that you listen to or a short funny video that allows you to be distracted. If it helps you to pay attention to the news, that's great, but it can also be fine to take a break from that, particularly when you need your focus and concentration for your classes. And then the last thing that I wanted to do is talk concretely about a mindfulness technique. We call it a grounding technique that could be helpful for you if you are experiencing stress and anxiety and having a hard time feeling regulated emotionally. And so this grounding technique is pretty classic. You've probably heard of it before. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself in a situation where you feel safe and it's quiet, if that's possible. Focus on your breathing and your posture so that you can get oxygen into your body. And then you just want to Let's start with 5. You're using all 5 senses. What are 5 things that you can see around you? 4 things around you that you could touch. You could touch those things and notice how they feel. 3, what are 3 things that you can hear? I hear the wind outside right now because it's windy here. It might be another person in the space with you, or your pets if you have one, or a bird outside. Things that you can smell. And it's really great if you have something available to smell. Citrus is excellent. It actually is shown that citrus helps you increase your mood. And the last is one thing that you can taste. What this does is it allows you to disrupt your brain's thinking pattern when you are anxious. And it's just basic science that can be helpful for you. So the kind of thing where it can be really helpful to just look at what's something I do in my day to direct myself into a space that's not focused on the future or focused on things that are outside of my control, but what's in my environment and how am I taking care of myself right now. So I'm glad to answer questions or come back to any of that. What we want to do now, there were some questions that several of you asked that, ironically, we're going to talk a little bit about some future things and some questions that people have about graduation. I'll also acknowledge that with some of these, you're going to hear us say that we don't necessarily know. It's very important to us that we're being as transparent with you as we can, and to know that we are all together and none of us know the future. But we do want to try to, as much as we can, give you our best thinking about it and where the university is right now. I will turn it back over to Jessica and Wendy and have you start with some of these.
Sorry, Tracy, are you giving us questions or?
Oh, sorry, I was going, yeah, sorry. Okay. So are summer classes going to just meet online like they do now?
Yes, so for summer 2020, all of our courses have moved online at both the graduate and undergraduate level. Summer registration has opened, so you can go and register for summer classes now. And as you probably saw from the communication from President Burwell, recognizing that so many of our families and students might be experiencing financial difficulty, we have discounted tuition for the summer. So our summer courses are being offered at a 10% tuition discount.
Okay, great. Several questions about online graduation. What do we know about what that's going to look like? And then when can we expect to have updates?
I can jump in here. So we are certainly planning online graduation activities, recognizing, however, that is not, it's just not the same, right? And we all acknowledge that and know that. I wanted to highlight a couple of things related to this. One, I've had several students ask, like, does it mean I don't graduate if we don't have a graduation ceremony? And the answer is emphatically no, it does not mean that. You know, as long as you complete all of your degree requirements, your graduation date will still be dated May of 2020, if that's when you were set to graduate. We will be you know, mailing diplomas and diplomas and transcripts and everything will be available as they always are. So all of those things will still continue. And then we are also going to be offering, you know, an increased opportunity to actually walk at graduation in the December ceremonies, most likely.
There was a question about whether or not students would still get a cap and gown even if they're going through online graduation. Do we know about that?
Yeah, the answer is yes, that students can request a cap and gown, and we can have that, there's a process set up so that students can request that and it can be mailed to them.
Great. And do we have a timeline for when diplomas would be received?
We do, approximately 6 to 8 weeks after after everything closes up, all the grades, per the registrar. So that's about when we expect that. And also the registrar's office is working with the president's office and the people responsible with graduation to develop some more communications to graduating students about all of the questions revolving graduation.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly scroll through the questions that have come in to see if there are any others about graduation, because helpful if we try to chunk the topics together. I think that might be it. Okay, so there were some questions. Very understandably, a lot of folks are wondering about fall 2020. And while that might seem like a long time from now, in fact, for us, we're coming on times when we're really trying to be as thoughtful as we can about what that might look like. So maybe we can start with what we know about fall 2020 in terms of classes, students coming back, that sort of thing.
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think, it is our intent to have classes that were intended to be residential and on campus in fall 2020 be on campus, and those that were planned to be online be online. That said, we are ready and prepared to, if we have to move to an online format, we would be ready to do that. I think we've learned a lot over the last few weeks, and we know what our systems can do and handle. And as soon as we had more information on that or a decision was made, we would absolutely communicate that out as quickly as possible. So it is absolutely our intent to, have residential courses on campus this fall, but we're also watching what's happening. We're, following the updates and what's happening in the world. We're talking to our risk management team and our health team. And as we begin to make those decisions, we will notify students as quickly as possible.
And I think the same would be true for like study abroad, correct? Which is,
that's right. And as folks may know, study abroad programs that began by July 31st have been called off for this year. They're mainly study abroad programs that are in the Southern Hemisphere. So that notification has gone out to students. Programs that begin after that, we are in a wait and see mode as to what is going to be possible. But as always, we'll try to get notifications out as expeditiously as possible.
Okay. It looks like most of the questions that we have received as we've been talking, there's a couple of clarifying questions that are being asked about OPT. So Gihan, do you have any guidance, and we can certainly refer people to ISSS on this as well. The impact on that 90-day window for OPT was a question that was asked.
I actually don't think of myself as the expert on this. I would rather be heard from our colleagues in ISSS on this particular question. And I'd encourage students to reach out directly, but we can also try to source an answer on that more generally.
Right. I will say my understanding is that there have not been any wholesale changes to those expectations at this point. We understand that that is very stressful, and we're doing our best to work very closely with the government on any updates that they've made. Yeah, okay. So is there general things that we can say about the impact of Passfail on scholarships? Whether those are merit scholarships or, we don't control all of those requirements, but.
Right. To the extent that we are aware, and just informationally for students, if they didn't know this, the Career Center, the Office of Merit Awards is a part of the Career Center. So I have some deep familiarity with the work that's going on over there. All the scholarships that are typically sourced and planned for the competitions to work in the course of the fall and on, we are acting as though they are ongoing, right? And we haven't heard anything different. Obviously, we will take information as it comes and let you all know as soon as we know anything different. But for now, we are moving forward, for example, with the Fulbright recruitment process, with the process of recruitment for a variety of scholarships in the UK, the very well-known ones like the Rhodes and the Marshall and so on. And we are in the process of selecting our next batch of Truman Scholarship nominees. So for now, we are in the course of the normal course of business. and acting as though everything is going to be back to normal by the time those applications are due. And if they're not, we'll deal with that at that time, right? And that's all. That's all I can tell you at this point.
I suspect the question might also have been intended to think about financial aid and scholarships related to financial aid. So just a quick couple of notes on that. Generally, the decision to elect a pass-fail grade in one or more courses should not affect your financial aid, including merit-based aid. So that's sort of the general answer. It's really important, if you have any concerns about that, that you speak with your financial aid advisor. We recognize that there could be students in particular situations where they might have questions about their aid. So for example, if you are a student who receives veterans benefit, really important that you talk with Veteran Services and that you talk with financial aid about any impact that could happen there. But I know we've received a lot of questions from students who say, look, I have a merit scholarship, I have a scholarship associated with the honors program. Those should not generally be affected by the decision to choose a pass-fail grade.
Great, thank you. So there's a question I think we all might be able to share some of our advice or wisdom, and because we're all also going through some disruption, which is the question is, what would you say to students whose work ethic, and I'm going to maybe say motivation, is lower and not the same as that would be if I were on campus?
So I can jump in and say I think a couple of things. Like one, exercise some grace towards yourself. I mean, I think we all have to keep in mind that we're experiencing, and for some of us, we're experiencing a trauma-like reaction to a lot of what's going on, or a grieving reaction for things that we thought were going to happen this semester that aren't. So I think, like, be kind to yourself and try to help. As we talked about earlier, think through, when are the time periods I'm more productive? Are there times or places that I am more able to get things done? But also, please communicate with your faculty members, when that stuff is happening. But I think really important to recognize that we're all going through some version of that, and I think some of it's a normal reaction. I'm a parent of two kids who are doing the online schooling right now, and we're all losing our minds slightly trying to get it done. And so I'm certainly witnessing some of those motivation dips with my 13-year-old as well. So I think accept that some of that is within the bounds of normal and figure out where you can thrive. My sort of personal mantra with all of this, when I used to train for marathons, and my mantra was always relax and run steady. And that's what I think we need to try to do. Like, just relax and run steady, and be kind to yourself.
Can I just add in a word of advice on this also? Everything that Dean Waters said, I completely endorse. I think that that's really important. We need to take that moment to grieve and to mourn and get ourselves kind of oriented, and that's okay. On the career front, even in good times, there are motivational issues sometimes. Even though you have this pressing need to have a job, it can feel really overwhelming when it's this huge big thing that is sort of sitting over you and you're not quite sure how to tackle it. And that's only exacerbated in a time like this, right? Where you have all these other factors going on, that so much uncertainty, which is very difficult for most of us to deal with, right? So I would encourage you, like, the best way to deal with that is to actually take action, right? That's when you're going to actually create a plan of action and get some steps going that will allow you to see some progress and break down what is a bigger, overwhelming thing into chunkable pieces that are doable action steps. And again, your career advisors, and the same principle applies in other parts of life, right? Or your academic support advisors and your faculty can also be motivational in this way of breaking down what is a bigger kind of overwhelming feeling and chunk it into manageable assignments and pieces that you can feel good about checking off your list. Like today, I did the things that I was supposed to do to move things forward for myself. Or I made progress towards this goal that I have in the bigger process. But that takes some planning and foresight in advance.
Jump
Our
in real
brains
quick.
respond. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Mine will be quick. I know for me, finding something that you are still able to do that was part of your normal routine prior to everything changing, I think is real important. It gives you kind of little blasts of what will hopefully be back. So for me, that's maybe taking my dog for a walk to the park or doing a Saturday morning bike ride. So I know we're obviously limited, but hopefully you can find something little that is, used to be quote unquote normal, if you will.
So I wouldn't advocate for like putting on a suit or a, dress or something fancy. What I would say though is putting on something that you would wear or have around you that connects you to learning, studying, working on whatever it is that you need to do. I know for me, when I was in graduate school, I had a place that I sat in the library where that was where I wanted to be in order to be able to really focus and do my work. Have that right now, right? And for many of you, the space that you're in might be the same place where you play video games or sleep or, watch a movie. And so what's really important is training your brain. Now's the time that I focus on my work. And as much as you can, start with the thing you want to do the least first. And using the technique Gihan talked about, if you can do one part of it, if what you do is you write down, all right, I have to write my references for my paper. Just say, I'm going to write one. You might only write one, then you've been successful, you met that goal, but you might write 3 or 4, or you might spend 20 minutes doing it. But what you do is you say, I'm going to do this one, because it's much easier to push a stone down a hill than it is to push it up a hill. So if you help that kick in your brain, you're going to be successful, which increases your motivation. And so that you can do in your environment that allow you to do that will just create the momentum for you. And going back to what Jessica said, be compassionate with yourself, because this is not the time to try to be a perfectionist in terms of how you think about your performance.
One of my other favorite little tips around motivation is to externalize it from yourself. And what do I mean by that? I mean, tell somebody else that you're going to do this, and you're much more likely to do it. Right? Because you've both spoken the words out loud, it makes it more real. And you have perhaps some sense of, it may be a false sense of accountability, but it's kind of like you might feel sort of more likely that you're going to do it if you told somebody else that you're going to do it, and then you don't want to face them and say, oh no, actually I didn't do it. So anyway, that's another little tip with motivational things.
We just have a couple of minutes left. I'm wondering if the panelists have any last words of wisdom or thoughts that they want to share.
I would just say find some new ways to connect with the people that you love and care about and that make you laugh, that will help you get through this. I know people are having virtual happy hours and virtual game nights and things like that. It's not the same. In my household, we're very disappointed that my 4-year-old won't get his bounce house birthday party that he really was waiting for this weekend. But we'll do new ways. We'll sing to happy birthday to him over Zoom, and it will be something new and fun for him. So I just really encourage you to find some happy moments, find some laughter in the things that are making us nervous right now and the things that are making us frustrated right now, and know that we're all here for you. We really do want to help, and reaching out to anyone in your AAU community, please do that if we can help in any way, but also remember your other communities too, and rely on each other.
Okay, one last thing that I would say for many of you, you're back home with maybe your parents or family that you had kind of created some new routines for yourself, and it may feel like you're kind of back into an environment that isn't necessarily giving you the space that you're used to. And if you can frame that for yourself as like a small episode in a larger story, and you know, roll your eyes inside your room before you go out and interact with them. But everybody is going to get through this, and it's important that we're kind to each other and do our best to come towards things with a light touch. So I hope that you've gotten some answers to the questions that you have. Again, we're going to send you a link so that you can watch this again if you would like to. And you can follow up with any of us with the questions that you might have. And you know, if we hear a strong wish to have another webinar to focus on things in the future, we will be very glad to do that. I want to thank the panelists today for your wisdom and information that you shared as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.